What was the deal with being asked to give amphetamines and cocaine to the crew?
Yeah, well, so I leveled up within the organization on Battle Beyond the Stars when they fired the production designer / art director because he wasn't designing and building sets in time. The schedule was horrific, and you're basically laying tracks in front of a speeding train. And they saw that I was a guy that didn't mind staying up all night, and I had a good artistic flair, and I could draw. They had no idea that I had any management skills whatsoever. I'd never been a production designer before. And they just took a flyer and said, "Do you want to take his place?" And we had like 2 weeks before we started shooting, and none of the sets were designed or built. It's like, okay, I guess I'm jumping into the fire. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. And they asked me at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So the next day, I show up to get briefed by the production manager. He says, "Okay, here's your petty cash voucher, and here's this, and here's that, and here's your swing shift crew list, here's your day shift crew list. Okay, here's your black beauties, here's your Coke." And he's just putting all this stuff out on the table. I'm like, wait a minute, what do I do with this stuff? I mean, I didn't take drugs. You know, for me, coffee was plenty. He said, "Well, you got to give it out to the crew." And I'm like, so I just became a dealer, I guess, you know, but that was just how things were done in that super low budget world, you know. We'll work for Coke, basically, you know. It was pretty nuts. So I just gave it all to my assistant art director. I said, "You deal with that." Apparently in that world, you are judged as a production designer or an art director by how fairly you distributed the drugs. I mean, I didn't want to play that game. It wasn't my thing.
You recall once working an 85-hour shift where you slept like an hour in the 85 hours. What was it about you at the time that recognized your ability to kind of succeed in those chaotic environments?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think I didn't know that I had that ability until I proved it to myself, and it was a chaotic environment. But you could apply logic to chaos. You know, I went out and I scoured junkyards. I went to crashed aircraft parts places, and I was ripping wings and stuff off and using them as set dressing. This is when I figured out how to use McDonald's breakfast trays. You know, you open them out and you can make what looked like these lovely vacuum form panels. You have to just make up solutions in the moment, and you don't even know what you know that you're going to require until it shows up. And if you don't have the answer, somebody else will, you know. But it's all about problem solving, and it's problem solving under duress.
You write the Terminator script. Studios are resistant to you as director.
Oh, sure. They wanted the script, but they didn't want me.
Right. Tough period. Yeah. And you have no money at the time. You're, you know, trying to get 2-for-1 McDonald's Big Macs coupons.
My mom helping out.
But how do you pull off figuring out how to direct?
Figured the only way to do that is to write it and control it. So I was smart enough to know that you had to control the rights. And that was the only way I was going to get a job. I mean, after getting fired off Piranha 2, I wasn't at zero. I wasn't at the bottom rung. I was now below where I had been a year earlier. I had to get back to the bottom rung, you know, and the only way I could see clear to do that was to create my own thing. So I wound up writing 3 scripts at more or less the same time. One was The Terminator, the other one was Rambo First Blood Part 2, and the other one was what became Alien 2 at the time. Because I'd been out kind of around taking meetings as a writer based on my first draft of The Terminator. People liked me as a writer. I was like the new, hot, young, you know, techno-thriller writer. And so I had the shooting draft for Terminator and then these 2 other scripts, and I had to do them all somehow in like 3 months, which I almost pulled off. But Stallone wanted some rewrites, and I'm not going to blame him. It was a normal process to rewrite a script, but I didn't understand that. I was such a noob that I didn't understand that when you sign a deal for a script, you also sign a deal to write the rewrite. And so what I thought was going to be a 4-week gig turned out to be an 8-week gig. And by the time I got to Aliens, I didn't have time to get it done. And the producer, David Geiler, yelled at me on the phone when I told him I couldn't get the script done. He said, "You'll never work in this town again." So if you've ever wondered, people actually say that. Fortunately, his partner, Walter Hill, who was a director, knew what that was like. And he said, "All right, kid, just send me the pages." And so I sent the pages over, and I called him up the next day, and he said, "All right, we're going to wait for you." I said, "So I could finish the script after I do Terminator?" And he said, "Yeah, we'll wait for you." And I said, all right, well, you're a pretty experienced director. Any advice on shooting my first film? He said, yeah, don't f it up. Which is actually really good advice.
But to actually go from, writing it to getting one of the studios to give you the
it wasn't
opportunity.
A studio. It was a low-budget, independent, production company called Hemdale, run by a guy named John Daly, and he financed the development. And Gail was actually kind of instrumental in triggering some of the financing as well. I think she brought in HBO. So we had a good producer-director relationship, Gail and I. We willed that film into existence.
I was talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger about you, and he's called you a mentor before, but do you remember the debate you guys were having about the Terminator getting drunk and how to say, "I'll be back"?
I don't remember anything about getting drunk, because the Terminator couldn't get drunk.
Well, he said he came to you with an idea for the Terminator.
Oh, I shot that down. I'm sure that sounds pretty lame. But no, Arnold was not one of these guys that was constantly pestering me with ideas. Usually when he brought an idea, it was pretty good. The "I'll be back" thing, my memory of it is that it was, the line in the treatment or in the script is, "I'll come back." And when I heard him say it, it didn't ring, so on the set I just changed it to "I'll be back." The "be back," the alliteration of that just sounded better.